Hello, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. In this lecture, we're looking at um, chapter 14 of Global Strategic Management, which is on global human resources. This is a little bit lighter chapter, even though it's very important, than especially the last one we looked at on the financial management side. So hopefully this will be a little quicker and a little more accessible. But anyway, global human resources is a fascinating part of the business of multinational corporations and what they look at when they consider things overseas. How you manage your people, how do you get them to do what you want when you're crossing borders? It can be difficult with three people in your office to get them all pulling along the same line, but how do you do that when you're crossing borders, when you deal with other cultures, other languages, all those other things? And so it's quite a fascinating part of the business. Um, when you look at that, often the success, as you see on slide 2 there, if you please do call up the slide presentation for this one, by the way. Anyway, when you look at slide 2, you see that the success often relies on the quality of the people who are in charge of its implementation. That's always the case with strategy. When we looked at strategy development, you have the different elements, and one of them is the who. Who's going to do it? Who is going to run this thing, make it happen, and manage? Managers are hard to come by. Uh, um, and I'll say also that management is what companies say they want to manage and what they actually put in place is often quite different. Everyone says they want a people-focused, driven, tough but fair, coaching type, mentoring, management structure, but you won't find that all that often. So you'll see a lot of different types of managers that have worked their way up into the position for who knows what reason, usually effectiveness in somewhere, in some area of sales or production. But the management part isn't all there. So, and you see the same thing when people get sent to different places to manage different things or to run different things or to work in an area. It's a tough thing to manage, and people spend a lot of time and effort on getting the right fit with people, but they often don't do enough in that area, and you'll see some tremendous mistakes in terms of putting people in certain roles and positions that don't work out. So for most multinational corporations, there is a need to have a worldwide policy. Normally, big companies, in the HR department, they'll have a very clear policies on, how to move people around and what people do what. But and you'll have a global career people. This used to be a little more common than it is now, where I worked at Standard Chartered Bank for a while, and there, especially in previous days, where there are a large component of people that were kind of signed up for the international part of the business, and a lot of that was that you were available, you would agree to be in some place the day after they told you to go. You just went, and you'll see people that do that all the time. You get an email or a phone call, we need to see you in Dubai by tomorrow, and you'd go. It was exciting, it was fun, and they were everywhere, and that was a camaraderie that existed with that sort of mentality is very positive. So you want to create that, and there'll be different companies will have a different emphasis on that. Huge companies like a Citibank, etc., they have people all over the place, and so they're very well defined. And then within that overall structure, you'll have the individual corporate HR structure and HR management structure within each country, because of course every situation is different in terms of what the local labor laws are, how you allocate people, what the working hours are, what the different legislation is, where you can get into trouble with people, etc. So there are all sorts of things that are particular to every country, and you have to have someone local that understands that and can treat your employees accordingly. You'll have the assignment issue and the management issue and the localization, and you need to develop their skills for effectiveness there. That again, that's changing a lot. I went to Thunderbird, and the concept there was, as a graduate school, is to train you in a language and a culture and a geography and in business, so that you could be sent somewhere with a certain level of affinity already in place, and it worked very well. But that happens less now. Now there are more opportunities for people that are locally there that are just as well trained, et cetera, to do that. So you don't have as much of that concept of you take somebody, train them at office, and send them over there and incur all those other related issues, which was an exciting life, but it doesn't happen quite as much anymore. I mean, it occurs, of course, but it isn't quite the same model. Expatriate management is a key thing. You have two different ways of. You have the traditional way of where you recruit from headquarters, home country. There's a compensation package. Expat compensation package will usually what that concept is to encourage you to go overseas. So they'll cover certain things like your education for your kids, where you live, they'll manage taxation, and provide you with a car. Now, that may not seem like a big deal, but it often is, because sometimes many countries are extremely expensive to live in the kind of place that expatriates want to live in, based on safety and the kind of having the things that they want to have. And maybe it could just be big wash machines and regular showers and things like that. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but in many countries it's totally different. So you'll have an enclave of expat type houses that are rented at very high rates in neighborhoods catered to other expats, so they can be with each other, and then they'll have an American school or whatever. It's expensive. So handling those things, that the expat will say, look, if I go there, I won't be able to survive if I don't have some help with my where I'm going to live, and the cars can be all different prices, and also education for my kids. When it comes down to groceries, things like that, it's usually no big deal. Taxation is a big deal, because usually the taxation in every country is a little bit different, and what you want is a tax, what they call equalization. So you're willing and happy to pay the same taxes that you would pay if you'd stayed in the States. So your company has to arrange for that to happen for you, that no matter what the taxation issues are there, no matter what the taxation issue at your home country, that you're not a disadvantage. And that can be highly very expensive for the company to make sure that all your taxes are paid, but that you don't reflect on you. And sometimes doing that for you becomes a taxable benefit that the company also has to pay. So often you'll see in expatriate assignments that after 3 or 4 years, the accumulated cost of the person is very high until you get transferred back home. So anyway, that's the way that works. Global staffing is when you recruit people all over the place, including the home country, and you have more local contracts. So you say, and a lot of American companies do that too. You say, I'll send you to London. Here's your salary. Do the best you can. And my salary might be way more, but you're going there and think, well, okay, is this possible? And is this the right thing for me to do in my career? Even though for a while it might be tough. On the other hand, it's a lot of fun, and it's usually fair enough. But you may live differently from how you would in Iowa, something like that. But that's really something that companies do. And the reason for that, of course, is it manages the costs, keeps costs in perspective, and they can say, yeah, I'm paying a little bit more for that person, for a local person, but not that much more. And I'm getting a lot of value out. Whereas a straight expat, you're paying way more, often than a local person, and you think, how much more am I really getting there? Now, those are decisions companies make, whether the expat has a high benefit to them and needs to be there, or they can find a local person or a person willing to take a local package. It's different. In the European Union, it's really attractive, is that you can go work anywhere in Europe, and you get paid in euros, and things tend to smooth out. When I worked in Europe, if you got on a plane on Monday, you're seeing people go all over the place, all across Europe for work, and on Friday night or Thursday night coming back home to wherever they live. So you see a much more mobile force across countries based on the European community. When you are sent overseas as an expat, or when you're doing anything overseas, you run into certain issues, and they're people and culture based. You often have these things where the manager's unable, or the person's unable to adapt. They don't adapt to you. There are all kinds of family-related problems. We see this all the time. That when you transfer family overseas, or they go work somewhere else, the man or woman who goes to work is usually very happy, because they have a great job. It's exciting. It's work, and they're doing something new and different, and it's thrilling. And they usually tend to work very long hours because they want to prove themselves, and they have to get adapted to the new situation. The people they leave at home, it can be totally different. The kids may not like their school, but say they do. Say they love their school. So they go, boom, they're off to school. Now you have the spouse sitting at home, often unable to work because it doesn't have a work permit, doesn't know anybody, or the people they know are people they would not normally hang around with at their home country, and they can be dissatisfied. So that person becomes very key. It's some people absolutely love the life. It's exciting, it's thrilling, and you often can do a lot of. You can work sometimes, or you can do volunteer things. You can get involved in things you never could before, and you tend to get to know people from all sorts of different countries. So it can be quite exciting. It's your attitude, it's your approach, it's how you deal with life. And so some people look at it, and some people will say, "Oh, it's bad here." When it's not bad, it's different. Different doesn't mean bad. So, and that's usually the case. You say, "Wow, there's so many different things. Some of them are wonderful. Some I wish they would change." But it's just the way it is, and it's exciting. Your attitude means everything. I have to say, I thoroughly enjoyed all my overseas. When I grew up, I went to 4 different high schools. New York, Peru, Brazil, and back in the States. And it was fantastic. Now, not everybody likes that. Not everybody likes to move all the time. Not everybody enjoys that. But for me, it was a real pleasure. And my family's been the same way. We're always happy to move, happy to go somewhere and see the new things you can see. But that's not always the case. So it's really important you gauge that, not just the person you're sending, but the whole family situation. Will they be happy there? Unhappy at home is unhappy at work. So you want to make sure that your worker is the spouse and the family situation is taken care of. Sometimes there's a lack of technical competence and motivation. Also, there's a thing called representitis that we all experience. When you're overseas, you start feeling isolated. You don't know what's going on behind you at the head office. People that you know, that your colleagues are getting different opportunities, different promotions, different things happening to them, and sometimes you feel and you start acting a little bit strange. So again, this is where communication comes into play. If you have an expat network, a bunch of people that are working for you all over the place, realize that they need to be communicated with, they need to be talked to, they need to know what's going on, and they need to be comforted that nothing's happening behind their back. You're taking care of them, you're watching their backs, you're standing up for them, you're protecting them, and you're appreciating their business. Otherwise, they will start tending to think, what's going on back there, and they get a little bit feeling this isolation, abandonment. Even if it's unjustified, that's the way it is. That's how people feel. So take extra care when you're managing people overseas, and when you are being overseas, realize that, look, it's not a big plot against me. I'm doing my job. Just do your work, maintain your communication, and realize that these things can tend to feel a little bit dear when you're outside the head office for a while. The next slide is on expat compensation elements they have to deal with. And then this last slide is that this is some of the fun part. This slide here is I used to live in one of these, this building right there on the beach in Rio, and my wife and I were in Beija-Flor and the carnival there. So there are a lot of really exciting things about being an expat. It's a lot of fun. The downside, yeah, it's there, but compared to the upside, you can't beat it. So I think it's a fun way to work. And when you're in the multinational corporations, you look for opportunities. Part of it is opportunities to travel and meet different people from different cultures and to enjoy the diversity and the differences that you can find that exist in different countries and different markets. I think that's really exciting, and it just adds such a component and a positive area to your work life. It's hard to beat. Okay, hope that makes sense. Hope that helps. All right, talk to you soon.